sisters, the last time I stood here, I was reminding myself about how fast the month of Ramadan flew by. And how each and every single one of us indeed feels the difference of the passing of the month of Ramadan. The difference in our level of iman, in our degree of commitment, and in the status of our a'mal. And I reminded myself and shared with all of you, out of the many reasons, two particular reasons behind the dip that we experience in our a'mal, in our iman, and in our dedication and commitment. And one of those reasons is the fact and reality that the month of Ramadan is not any ordinary month. It is indeed a blessed, sacred, and holy month that is surrounded and enveloped in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sheer and complete, infinite mercy. Apart from that, it is a month in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala eliminates and phases out the obstacles and hurdles that we may face in other months. So naturally, when Ramadan goes by, the change that we feel, or rather the challenges that we face after Ramadan, are naturally expected and inevitable. So that was one reason. The second reason behind the dip is the reality that our deeds, our a'mal, whether they're good or bad for that matter, on either side of the coin, because they do not have a tangible and visible existence, that causes a dip in our iman and our a'mal. We cannot gauge exactly and measure exactly how many good deeds we have gathered up, or how many sins and bad deeds we have piled up for that matter. And there's no exact way for us to calculate how many good deeds we have, because out of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala multiplies every good thing that we do from 1 to 10 to 700 times, or until the extent that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes. And this fluctuation and this variation of rewards is based on different factors. Sometimes it is based on the factor of sincerity. The more sincere a person is, the more Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards a person on an action. The more Allah blesses that action, the more Allah gives weight to that particular deed. Sometimes it is based on the struggle that one is facing on carrying out a certain deed. The variation is based on how well and how, according to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, it is being performed or carried out. Sometimes it varies based on the need and the dire desperation of a particular situation. So what our deeds are worth, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. And we cannot find out until we stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this element of mystery, this element of suspense that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put within the good deeds, this element of mystery and suspense is meant to increase our enthusiasm. It is meant to increase our excitement in doing good and in being good. Now, moving on, a reason why this concept of the fact that it's a mystery and it should drive us to do more wherever we can, whenever we can, however we can, to whoever we can. This concept becomes very hard for many of us to absorb because we live in a day and age of advanced technology. And we are so used to obtaining results of things around us immediately. We expect to run a report or a diagnostic check on our soul, on our a'mal, so that we can get a report immediately, but that's not how it works. But we are used to this type of thing. Let's take, for example, our physical well-being, moving away from our spiritual well-being, our physical well-being. We want to know exactly how many steps we took today, how many stairs we climbed today, how many calories we burned today, what was our calorie intake for today, what was my sleep pattern last night, what is my heart rate exactly at this moment. These things are obtainable. When we go to the doctor for a checkup, we find out what is my HDL, what is my LDL, my glucose level, my vitamin D, etc., etc. And then after that checkup, if there is something that is a matter of concern or something that needs our attention, then in order to stay physically well-being, there are certain actions that we need to take. Whether it's controlling our intake, restricting our diet, watching what we eat. And for some people, it's about taking it easy and relaxing. While for others, it means getting more active. But with our a'mal and with our ruh, this is not the case. You can't give vials of blood and run a ruh scan or some type of test to see, okay, what is the level of my salah? Is it very low or is it very high? What is the level of my zakah? Is it low? Is it weak? Is it strong? How is my spirituality? Do I have blockages in my soul? How is my soul beating? What is my soul rate? There's nothing that can gauge and measure that for us. And even if there was a way to gauge our exact standing, would it really matter? Would it really matter? Would it concern us? Would we give a care? And that's a whole issue altogether. Does praying matter? Does zakat matter? Does hajj matter? Does reading the Quran matter? Does its message matter? Does our submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala matter? Does our obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala matter? Does our submission and compliance to His will matter? Does the sunnah matter? Does adherence to the sunnah and respect for the sunnah matter? The things that are going on throughout the world around us, in humanity, and with Muslims in particular, does that bother us? What's going on in this country, is that bothering us? What's going on in our city, in our community, in our congregation, does that bother us? Does it matter? And I'm not meaning to go into a sound off or a rant, but you know what matters? What people around me will think of me. What society around me will think of me. What my family thinks of me. What I drive matters. What I wear matters. Where I live matters. How I live matters. My profession matters. My business or my businesses matter. How well my family eats, dresses, lives, and spends. That matters. Their education and their financial stability matters. Money matters. Wealth matters. Fortune matters. Positions matter. Properties matter. Our titles, they matter. My brothers and sisters, the best title given to the best of Allah's prophets and the best of Allah's creation was the word abd. Subhanallah asra bi'abdi. Alhamdulillah Alhamdulillah alladhi anzala ala abdi. The word abd was the best title that was granted to the best of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. And what does abd mean? The one who complies to Allah's command. The one who is always at Allah's service and Allah's wish. But does being that abd to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala matter? Does being humble in front of Allah matter? We are living in a day and age of uniqueness, individuality. Me, myself, and I. iPhone, iPad, I this, I that. We are living in a day and age where everyone wants to be different and stick out and be above the people around them. So does being an abd matter? Do these things matter? You know, as an ummah, as a nation, as a congregation that's just sitting here, we are facing real problems. Every problem that we see on TV, that we read in the paper or online, every problem that we witness in society around us is within our community. Whether it's drugs, dealing in drugs, whether it's weed, alcohol, dealing in alcohol, adultery, cheating, you name it. Look at the amount of broken homes. Look at the divorce rates amongst the Muslim community. For those who have been here for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, you notice this difference. You have experienced this difference. And this is a time where we are passing the torch on to our children. Look at the business dealings within our communities, the family feuds within our community. All these things that we see in other society around us, is in our community. It is in our society. And what is the root of all of these things? What is the root of each and every single problem that we are facing, whether it's on an individual basis, whether it's on a collective basis, whether it's on the basis of being an ummah? There's one main root, and that is the lack of taqwa, plain and simple. The lack of the awareness and conscience that, you know what? Allah watches every single thing I do. Allah hears every single thing I say. He knows what I am doing. He knows what I'm thinking about. He knows what I'm planning. He knows what I'm carrying out. And it is because of the lack of this awareness that, you know what? Allah is watching me. He's not over our shoulder. He's everywhere. The lack of this conscious and the lack of this awareness, it causes us to get our priorities mixed up. And when we get our priorities mixed up, it results in the problems that we are facing as a community today. The fact that we give so much preference to worldly and secular education and sciences over understanding one's deen. And by the way, there was a point in this ummah where there was no separation between religion and the sciences. The sciences were a part of understanding religion, and religion was a part of understanding the sciences. These things work hand in hand. Not anymore. The lack of taqwa and awareness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our Rabb. We say, Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. He's not just taking care of me, or you, or you, or you. He's taking care of the whole universe. And all the universes that are out there. The whole galaxy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pulling the strings on everything. The lack of this awareness, it causes one to be shady in their business dealings. It causes one to be crooked in their business practices and be involved in the sale and advertisements of haram and evil, whether it's sold by a gram or an ounce or by a six-pack. The lack of taqwa has caused us to sacrifice our deen and tear it up into pieces to keep climbing the so-called ladder of success and prosperity in our careers and in our professions. The lack of taqwa has got our priorities mixed up so much so that we will save for years to take our families overseas, to the Middle East, or to the sub-Indian continent. We will save for years to take our family overseas on a vacation, but we keep on delaying Hajj because, I don't have enough money saved up. It is not fun on me. Our priorities are so mixed up that we feel it is incumbent on us to continuously stay in debt so that we can live in a certain way, so that we can drive a certain car and eat in a certain way. And we are so caught up in debt and in working so hard to pay off that debt that we have no time to groom our children, to instill within them, to plant within them the seeds of Islamic values and morals. We have no time for our parents because we are too busy. But the question is, are we really too busy, or have we chosen to become busy? Too busy to even recognize and acknowledge the fact that Allah has created us and He has given us everything that we have. Too busy to not even find the time to put our head on the ground to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for everything that He has given us. Very amazing and surprising is the state of humanity, because he sacrifices his health in order to make money. Then he sacrifices his money to recuperate his health. And he's so anxious about the future that he does not enjoy the present. And what is the result? That he does not live in the present, and he neither lives in the future. He lives as if he is never going to die, and a person dies having never really ever lived. My brothers and sisters, we were born to do more than just work, pay bills, and die. Again, this is not a rant, this is not a sound off, but this is a reminder for myself, so I can wake up, so I can snap out of this deception. And we need to snap out of this. Not next year, not when we have a near-life death experience, not tomorrow, but we need to snap out of it today. We need to invest our time and our money in the spiritual well-being of ourselves and our children. We need to instill within them the seeds of concern of religion, the seeds of recognition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of respect and reverence for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam before anything else. Because us as parents and our children, before we are American, before we are Pakistani or Indian or Palestinian or Jordanian or any background relationship that we have, before any of those things, we are Muslims, the submitters to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will and command. Honestly, brothers and sisters, we spend so much of our time and our money and our tears and our blood and our sweat in order to obtain a good education and be financially stable. There's nothing wrong in that. But for all of those things to come at the cost of our children not even knowing their Creator and what deen and religion demands from them, do I think as a parent that just as today I am standing proud and boasting, MashaAllah, my son graduated from high school, my daughter graduated from college with honors, with a master's, with a PhD, MashaAllah, they have such a wonderful job. Do I think that as a parent I'm standing up proud and boasting to others about my accomplishment in regards to my children? Do I think on the day of judgment I will be able to stand before people and before Allah in that same boastful manner, when I sacrificed everything for that? when they have lost Allah in the process, when they have lost the Prophet ﷺ's sunnah in the process, what will that mean on the Day of Judgment? Our kids, if they haven't already, they are about to go back to school. They are about to go back to high school. They are about to go back to colleges. If they already haven't. And guess what? Mothers and fathers, they have choices to make on a daily basis. They will face temptations and trials and tests of shaitan on a daily basis. We think we have tough choices to make. Our children have tough choices to make. Our teens have tough choices to make. That's assuming that they consider that as a choice and alternative. For many of our children, for many of our teens, if they have not received grooming from the home, if parents did not lead by example, then there's no choice. There's only one choice. There's only one thing that they see. And that is doing everything opposite of being the act of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we need to snap out of it. And we need to develop this taqwa, the conscience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah is watching us. When we sacrifice the deed of our children for their dunya, when we grind up their spirituality, so that they can be financially stable, Allah is watching all of that. And if we even had the amount of taqwa and awareness and caution that we carry out, if we had even the amount of awareness that we have of law enforcement when we drive, if we even have the amount of awareness of the IRS when we do our business transactions, if we have that much awareness for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we would be in a much better place. Brothers and sisters, as we gear up to welcome the month of Dhul Hijjah, as we get ready to witness the Hajj and the pilgrimage, we are being reminded of who? Hajj is a reflection of what? It is a tribute to It is a tribute to Ibrahim alayhi salam. It is to reflect the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam, his submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his compliance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command, his acceptance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will and wish, and not just him. But Hajj is a reflection on his wife as well. And not just them two. But Hajj is a tribute in honor of the patience and sacrifice of a whole family to the will and command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hajj reminds us and reflects about the story of a father and son working together to establish the epicenter of the whole universe, a place where humanity goes to learn the lesson of being an abd, a place that all of humanity goes to learn humility and patience, where people go to purify themselves. They go to recharge their souls, revamp their a'mal and souls. This is what Hajj is about. It is the story of a father, a son, and his wife, a family that displayed their ubudiyyah and their submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Did Allah make them go hungry and die of thirst? Allah gave us Zamzam through their sacrifice. Did Allah cause them to perish? Allah gave us the city that never sleeps. And it is always awake in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there was sacrifice involved. Ibrahim alayhi salam was asked to sacrifice and slaughter his son. He did not hesitate. And his son also complied. Did Allah take his son away? Allah did not take away anything from Ibrahim alayhi salam, but gave him so much more that today Ibrahim alayhi salam is the most respected and most respected and reverend personality on the face of this earth. There are people who reject the Prophet ﷺ's prophethood. But there are many people, and more people, who accept Ibrahim ﷺ to be one of the messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That type of rank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Ibrahim ﷺ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to make sacrifices as well. He asks us to give up things as well. He orders us to stay within the realm and restrictions and limitations of our sharia. But instead of slaughtering our own desires and nafs, we slaughter the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, expecting more. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those who prioritize their deen over their dunya, and allow us to follow in the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his forefathers Ismail and Ibrahim alayhi salam. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.